someone's just looking to build their self-esteem and their confidence. What does the brain tell us about the process of doing that? Does it go back again to what we said about awareness, about understanding the feelings and the consequences, and about setting goals and repetition and accountability?
It will get to that, but there's actually a little bit of a jump start to that, which is really helpful, particularly in terms of confidence and self-esteem, which is that usually there's a particular recurring negative thought that's associated with feelings of lack of confidence. So if you can identify what that is and create a positive affirmation that's like the opposite of it or something that counteracts it, then that can be a great way to get started. My phrase would have been, it has to be perfect and it's not going to be perfect. I wouldn't have been able to say this last year, but now I would probably be able to say, it is going to be better than perfect. It is going to be amazing. Like, I know it. But to get myself there, I could have said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's going to be great. Or I could have said, maybe it will be perfect. Sometimes a question I ask myself is, what's the best possible outcome that could happen here? So it's changing your language in your mind about the things that you think. So that's basically metacognition, which is that you can understand your own thinking, and then reversing that narrative quite strongly, even if it doesn't feel like it's totally true, and just repeating that so much that you start to wear down that other pathway.
Does language really matter? The language we say to ourselves and say to others?
Yeah, it really matters. Yeah, how we speak about ourselves.
How do we know that matters?
I mean, it's neuroplasticity. If you're repeating something in your mind or out loud, then if that's being repeated more than another statement, it's the one that your brain's going to believe.
So we can trick our brains effectively by saying something else to ourselves repeatedly. Because there's this whole movement in, the personal development community, which says you just kind of look in the mirror and you say to yourself, like, I'm beautiful, I'm attractive, everyone's going to love me, I'm going to be rich. And I've found it hard to get on board with that train.
Yeah. That one...
Because I know I'm bullshitting myself. In my subconscious or whatever, I just know if I said those things, I'm not saying about myself, but saying those very, very far away things, I just think my brain is smart enough to know that I'm bullshitting myself.
Yeah, I think there's an element of reality to it. So there's a few things there, which is those particular things that you said are very shallow. They are not really the things that people should need to be saying to themselves. What I find, and I picked this up from a podcast with Lewis, is he said that sometimes he would just say to himself, I'm safe, I'm okay. And actually just sometimes saying to myself, I'm safe, that's what I need to hear, not I'm beautiful and I'm amazing. That does feel like, A, it's the kind of thing that everybody probably wants to say. B,
it's not addressing the underlying issue, is it?
It's not addressing, and I'm going to be rich. I mean, that's the worst one, because you actually have to do stuff to make that happen. You can't just say that. So I think finding the stuff that you need to say to yourself that is not to do with social expectation or parental expectation or, social group, what everybody else is doing, like what you really want to know for yourself, that's going to set you up to be able to go out into the real world and do the stuff that you need to do to get the other things that you want.
There you said, you can't just say it, you have to go out and do it. Now, when people hear this term manifestation, it's highly associated with just kind of saying stuff or thinking stuff. And it's less associated with actually going out and doing it. So a lot of people just turn off when someone talks about manifestation because it sounds kind of woo-woo, put it on the vision board and it will happen. And in fact, I think I've said this a few times, but I had, I wouldn't say it was an argument, but a disagreement, which resulted in the person I was speaking to literally getting out of a taxi in the middle of New York City and walking off. I was on a date many years ago, and the girl was saying to me that she goes, you can just manifest anything into your life. So you can just think about it and then it will happen. So I said to her, I was like, you think you could just think about becoming a millionaire and then it will happen? And she goes, yeah. And I go, and you wouldn't even have to do all the stuff. And she was like, no, you could just think about it and the universe will attract it into your life. Do you believe in manifestation? And if so, what form of manifestation? And how is that supported with neuroscience?
So I believe in manifestation based on your brain. So your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions. So where I've called my book The Source, I have said your brain is the source of you being able to attract everything that you want into your life. So I sat down one summer and I researched the laws of attraction and just looked at whether I could explain them through cognitive science, which is psychology and neuroscience, and I could. So I was kind of like, oh, I'm onto something here. And the first stage for me was understanding that it is absolutely to do with the way that you think, but then it's not magically like attracting something in the atmosphere. It's to do with the changes that you make based on your thought process. I do believe in vision boards, but I call them action boards because I see them as a representation of what I want, but I still have to go out there and make those things happen. Mm. I think it's also much more empowering to believe that it's your brain that's making that stuff happen and not some external force that you're not really sure what it is.
This point about aging generally, longevity and aging, one of the really interesting things you talk about in the book is this idea of sort of psychological priming and psychological priming of aging. And that psychological priming is the effect that the mindset of aging has on our physical body, how our thoughts about aging affect our physical abilities. What I interpreted from that is our thoughts about aging have an impact on our aging.
Yeah, so actually there's a really fascinating study. It's one of my favourite ones to talk about, which was 3 groups of octogenarians.
What's an octogenarian?
People in their 80s.
Okay.
And one group was the control group, so they just lived like normal for a week. One group had to reminisce about being in their 60s for most of the week, whenever they had an opportunity to. And one group were actually driven to retrofitted versions of their homes that looked like what their house looked like 20 years ago. They were given newspapers dated from 20 years ago. They had photos of themselves in that house when they were in their 60s. And one of the things was they got there and they were sort of like, okay, you know, who's going to carry our suitcase up to the bedroom or whatever? And they were like, no, you're 60 now. You carry your own suitcase. So it literally started from the minute they got there, and these little old ladies had to, and gentlemen had to carry their cases up. After 1 week, the people in that group were taller because their posture improved. They had better musculoskeletal coordination than they had a week before. In before and after photos that were shown to people that didn't know them, they were rated as younger in the 1 week after photos than the photos from arriving at that place. And the reminiscing group also had some improvements, but not as much as a group that lived like they were in their 60s.
And so there was 3 groups.
Yeah.
The ones that went back and relived their life, the ones that reminisced, and the ones that did nothing at all.
Yeah.
Wow. And that really goes to show the impact of what we think about ourselves and then all of the physiological consequences of that. You talk about this, your eyes as well. Mm. About you were going to get, was it like laser eye surgery or something?
No, it's just like...
People told you needed glasses.
Well, my optician told me. So he's of Indian origin, same age as me. And he said, oh, I think, you know, you're probably going to need reading glasses next year. And I was like, no, I do not want reading glasses. That makes you look really old. And he was like, yeah, I know we both look younger than we are, but, you know, your eyes are going to age just like anybody else's. And I was like, no, they are not. So I left, came back a year later. He said, oh, how's it going with the reading? I said, it's fine. And he sort of went, okay, Tara. So he's doing my eye test. He spins round on his little chair halfway through and says, your eyes haven't got worse. They haven't even stayed the same. They've got better. And I said, I know. And he said, what have you been doing? And I said, well, I just said no to you when you said, I'm going to have to get reading glasses. And when I'm like looking at my phone or a book, and it feels like it would be a bit easier if I moved it further away, I just don't.
And what's that doing in the brain? Why did that improve your reading?
Well, I hadn't experienced a problem with my reading, but he was obviously seeing the numbers slightly change. I really didn't do much more than what I've just said. So it was like not accepting the limitation and then not changing my behavior. And I think that's what you see from the third group of people, which is that they had to change their behavior to live like without any help and in a way that they had to when they were younger. So that essentially removed the limitations that we impose on ourselves, which is that if I'm X age, it must mean that I need reading glasses or I need a walking stick or whatever it is. There's a kind of opposite experiment to that too, which was done with young medical students in Florida. And they had to walk between 5 rooms, and on the table were 5 pieces of paper with a word on it, and you had to string a sentence out of it. But that wasn't the real experiment. They thought that was the experiment. The real experiment was that in one of the rooms, the words that were on the table were Florida, beach, sunshine, walk, bungalow. And all of them walked more slowly out of that room than any of the other rooms because those words are associated with retirement. And that made them slow down. That, you asked me, is language important to our brain? That's how important it is.